Hello, hello. Welcome. Okay, so we'll jump right in here today and catch people up as they get in. Today's event, today's training is a fun one. Last week's training we worked on a little app that I'm going to put up on the screen here. 1 second. Share this up on the screen. Okay. Can everybody see my screen there? Hey, Tony. Thanks for joining. Right on. Okay, so this is the app we worked on last session. What we did in the last session was we added payment processing using Stripe. After adding that, we got the ability to put in card information here. This is just using a test gateway. We can process a payment. And that unlocks this recipe here. So now they have the ability to see this little recipe that is created. And this little tool, for those who didn't make the previous call, had a schedule conflict or whatever, is just a little tool that generates beer brewing ideas for breweries and uses AI to do that. So it makes for a fun little example for this. Today, we are going to work on putting a webhook in. So if a payment is processed, we need to be able to send whoever pays a receipt, right? And what I don't want to do is build a full email sending structure into a little app like this. That's just a lot of extra work that's not needed. When you're doing your apps, there are a lot of tools like Zapier, N8N, GoHighLevel, things like that have webhook automation capability. So instead of building in this functionality to capture information stored in a database, compose an email, properly send the email, connect to an SMTP provider to do all of that, instead of doing all of those steps and building all of that manually inside the app here, all we have to do is set it up to send a message to a webhook. And then we can use any outside tool to catch that webhook and do all the processing. Does that goal and concept make sense to y'all? Awesome. I see some head nods going on there. Wonderful. And yes, Taylor, cinnamon s'mores stouts would be a fun one. Got to find a brewer to make it. So there is one thing that, looking at this, that I think we need to add before we add a webhook. We'll see if we can do that quickly or if it's going to be a huge journey. And that is, in the card payment option here, we're not actually collecting any customer details. And to send them a receipt, we kind of need to capture their name and email. I think that would be useful. Let's explore that option first, and then we'll add a webhook in. This app, I have it running locally on my computer here. We're going to switch over to Windsurf, where this app is running. We're just going to go into chat mode here for a second. Look over the payment processing. Let's see here. Functionality. Tell me if there is an easy place to add in and capture the customer name and email when they pay. Right now, it only captures card info. Okay. There's a interesting little thing with Windsurf right now. They're in a bit of a fight with Anthropic about model usage. Anthropic cut off their model usage for the primary coding models like 3.7 and 3.5 and 4, cut off a lot of their bandwidth to that because Windsurf was purchased by OpenAI. So a little bit of conflict there. It looks like they're starting to get them reintegrated. So I may be able to switch back over to the model. It wasn't working earlier today. I was working a bit earlier this week, but has been on and off. So the models may be back, but right now I have it on O3, which should be able to handle this task. Welcome to everyone else who jumped in while I was talking there. Quick little bring you up to speed. We have this little app right here that was used in our last demonstration call, and we added payment processing so that you could unlock these recipes that it generates. Now we are going to add webhook capability so we can send people a receipt or put them in our database or whatever else we need to do. And to do that, we are adding contact information capture here first. So we have a name and email that we can call once we trigger that webhook. Right here, I'm having O3 look up the details, bring up the context window. So I ask a question to have it load up the context window here and understand what's going on. So let's just make sure that it found what we were looking for. One on the front end, one on the back end to capture the customer details. Okay. Great. This looks good. So we're going to change it out of chat mode. Please implement this fix additively. Do not change anything else. So additively is a really fun word to use for, and sometimes I can't type it, depends on the day, but it's a really fun word to use for your apps that are already built and you're just trying to increase functionality or put a feature in, because it helps keep the LLM on track with only putting in new stuff, not going and changing existing functionality. It's not perfect, but I have cross-tested, like giving the same prompt with and without it several times. And it's almost always more effective to include additively if you're putting in just a new function. So keep that in your back pocket to keep from breaking your applications as you add features. And now that I've said all of that, it will definitely break it as we go here. That's consistent. That's how it works whenever you actually go to demonstrate a concept. Something that I've noticed about O3 is it is very slow. Has anybody else been using O3 for coding projects? Feel free to chime in if you have, or in the chat. Tony, I like it. I like it. Hampshire, that's awesome. Joe, you use Lovable. Okay, I think Lovable uses, they may have upgraded already to 4, but they were using 3.7 from Anthropic, and Replit uses 4 there. That's generally what's done. Sarah, the video is not produced yet. It's in production, being edited and cleaned up. Sensitive information like keys and stuff being blocked out and stuff. And then we will publish that up and get that out available for everybody very shortly. That will be available in very little time. Matthew, who's on the call here, does all of my video editing, and he is doing an amazing job getting these all cleaned up. I'm really excited to see the new ones as they come out. The process is being perfected. Yeah, Francisco, I don't think many of them use OpenAI. Right now, the videos have been being put into Patreon, but we're getting ready to split them up and put them out on YouTube. So they'll be in sessions on YouTube, like broken up into steps and modules so people can follow those on YouTube, Sierra. And Matthew, when you get a chance, would you paste in the Patreon URL there, please? We're trying to break it out, give the whole all-in-one picture, but then break down the segments that people ask about a lot and put them on YouTube and make them accessible segments for people to get into. Okay, so what do we have here? It added these variables. And let's restart the app. So we're just going to Control C They're in our terminal right here. That's where I sent that command. And then this app runs with npm run dev. Now, if you've already given a command in terminal, and we're using Windsurf here, which is, for those of you who haven't been on some of these calls where I move applications around from location to location, this is like an advanced version of Replit. It has the agent capability, but you get a lot more access to your file management. You can control where you deploy. You can deploy to anywhere from here rather than being stuck in Replit's or Lovable's environment. I tend to build in these apps. It's a lot of fun to start an app in Lovable for design or start an app in Replit for interactivity because they're really good at those things. But then immediately pull them down and do the rest of your build locally if you want a little more control of what you're doing. I'm just running this in terminal here. It is the same thing pretty much as clicking that run button up in the top of Replit. It's on the back end, it's just doing the same command.
Courtney, when you say starting an app in Replit for interactivity, what do you mean by interactivity?
I have found that that different AI coding tools have specialties. And that comes down to the backend prompt, the system prompt that the tool uses. So whoever built Replit or whoever built Lovable writes a system prompt that goes out with every request, and that guides how it operates. The thing I found is when it comes to like apps that have several steps of interactivity where you're like selecting fields and maybe entering data into a form, you have several steps that sequentially have to happen before it takes action. I find that Replit does a really good job of building the initial framework for that. Something about their system prompt does a good job for that. And it puts a fairly nice user interface on top of what it builds. And then it seems to get stuck in some of the deeper processes when you're actually debugging that functionality. But it does the first build really well. Comparatively, Lovable does a great job with games or gamification. Like if you're trying to get nice, pretty buttons and click through sequences, Lovable builds a really good user interface for that sort of thing. That's what I'm talking about. Pick a tool, get your first design built. If you go to do the same thing in something like Windsurf here, it doesn't have nearly as defined system prompts for user interface. So you have to be very, very specific about your user interface. You need to give it the user interface stack that you want to use for what you're going to use for design. You need to give it mockups if you want it to churn out something nice. And then at that point it can't. Whereas those other tools, they have a lot of that built in and part of their library when they're doing the initial build.
Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Serverless backends. Nice. Sarah, what backend have you built that Replit did really well? What's the use case on AWS? Okay.
AWS.
Yeah, right on.
Let's see if this little bit trouble, but a little finesse and it works perfectly.
Look, that's the name of the game. I think you could just put everything needs a little finesse and then it works on any of these projects, and that's where you'll end up. Francisco, do you mind expanding on your question there about Lambda? Talking about the stack being used there. Got it.